Okay, so today we're going to be taking a look at something kind of spooky.
Oh, yeah.
It's aviation,
Right?
but with like a paranormal twist.
Definitely a unique combo.
Yeah, and
Excellent.
the story we're diving into today is about this pilot, Captain Bob Loft,
Yep.
and he died in a plane crash back in '72, but people say they still see him around.
Oh, wow. So like a ghost pilot? I'm intrigued.
Yeah, kinda. And the source material for this deep dive is this transcript we got. It's
Mhm.
called loons.txt. And it looks like it was probably from another podcast, I think it was, about the paranormal.
So we're going full ghost hunters today.
Well, we're gonna try to at least.
Right. I'm in.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so first things first, like what do we actually know about this crash?
Right. We got to start with the facts.
Yeah, so Captain Loft's crash, it was in 1972, and they said it was because of some kind of technical problem with the plane.
Makes sense.
The flight was going to Miami.
Okay.
And sadly, there were a lot of people who died.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, it was a real tragedy.
And you said this is where it gets a little weird, right?
Yeah, so after the crash, they salvaged some of the parts of the plane,
Okay.
and they actually used them on other aircraft.
Interesting. So like they took parts from the plane that crashed and put them on other planes?
Yeah, seems kind of strange looking back on it now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess back then it was probably standard procedure, but yeah, thinking about it now, it's definitely a little creepy.
Right, and that's where the story gets even more, well, interesting, I guess you could say.
Okay, wait on me.
So 2 years later, 1974,
Mm.
this passenger, May Paterson,
Okay.
she's on a flight, and she says she saw Captain Loft.
No way. So she saw him like walking around on the plane.
That's what she claims, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and she recognized him, too.
Hold on, but he had died 2 years earlier, right?
Exactly.
So how did she recognize him if he was, gone?
Well, she said she didn't realize it was him at first. Like, she thought it was just some random guy. But then later she realized,
That's creepy.
and apparently when she told the crew about it,
Yeah.
some of them, they kind of reacted like they knew who she was talking about.
Oh, so they knew about the ghost pilot.
Well, I don't know if they thought of it as a ghost, but it's like they recognized the description or something.
That's so strange. So it wasn't just her then.
No, and it gets even weirder.
No boy.
There are other reports, too.
From other passengers.
Passengers and crew.
Wow. So multiple people saw him. What did they say? Like, what did he look like?
Well, they all kind of described the same thing, like a figure that looked like Captain Loft. And there's this one account from a flight attendant that's really...
What happened?
Well, they said they saw him doing like a pre-flight inspection.
Like he was still working.
Yeah, like everything was normal, but when the attendant went to talk to him,
Yeah.
he just disappeared.
Yeah, hold on. So they saw him like solid, doing stuff,
Yeah.
made eye contact even, and then poof, he's gone.
Yeah, it's like something out of a movie or something, right?
This is wild. Okay, so we've got the plane parts, multiple sightings, vanishing act.
Right.
This is a lot to unpack. So where do we even start trying to make sense of all this?
Well, there are a few theories that I've come across.
Okay, like what?
One of them is this idea of an anchored spirit.
Anchored spirit. What's that?
So the idea is that sometimes a spirit, a ghost,
Mm-hmm.
they can become attached to a place or an object,
Okay.
especially if something really traumatic happened there, like a sudden death.
So you're thinking maybe Captain Loft is connected to those plane parts.
That's the theory, yeah. And as those parts fly around in other planes, maybe part of him goes with them.
That's actually pretty interesting. Like he's anchored to those parts, and wherever they go, he goes too.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's a pretty compelling idea.
It is. It is. But are there other ways to look at this? Like maybe it's not really a ghost.
Yeah, that's a good point. We have to consider other possibilities too, right?
Right. There's got to be some other explanations.
Like, what about psychology? Could there be something psychological going on here?
Definitely possible. I mean, think about it. If people know about this tragic crash,
Yeah.
especially if it was all over the news and stuff, that could totally mess with their heads when they're on a plane.
Right, like they're already nervous about flying, and then they hear this story about a ghost pilot.
Exactly. Their minds might start playing tricks on them,
Yeah, they might see what they expect to see, or like their brains fill in the blanks with the ghost story.
Right. It's like the power of suggestion.
That makes sense. But the transcript mentions that some people who saw him, they didn't even know about the crash.
Oh, really? It does make things a bit trickier then.
So it can't just be, everyone's imagination running wild.
Right. There's got to be something more to it.
Yeah, there's definitely more to this story.
Okay, so if it's not just their imagination, what else could it be?
Well, there's another theory.
Okay.
The transcript mentions something called residual energy.
Residual energy. I'm not familiar with that one. What is that?
So imagine this. You have a person,
Okay.
and they have really strong emotions,
Mm-hmm.
or they do the same thing over and over again for a long time.
Okay.
What if those actions, those feelings, they leave some kind of trace behind?
Like an imprint.
Yeah, kind of. It's like this energy that's left over.
So not really a ghost, more like an echo.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's like a recording of what happened, but not a conscious being.
Interesting. So you're thinking maybe that's what people are seeing.
Well, think about Captain Loft.
Okay.
He loved flying, right? He spent years and years up in the air.
Yeah, that was his life.
What if all that passion, all that experience, it left some kind of like energy imprint?
And that's what people are picking up on. It's a really interesting theory.
It is.
But it's definitely out there, you know?
Yeah, it pushes the boundaries of what we normally think of as like science and reality.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's what makes these stories so fascinating, right?
Yeah. Definitely. There's so much we still don't know about the world.
Exactly.
And about what happens after we die.
Right, and maybe these kinds of stories, they give us a little peek into those mysteries.
I like that. A little peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, it's like the universe is giving us these little hints.
And it's up to us to try and figure them out.
Exactly.
I'm ready for more hints. Let's keep digging.
Okay, so let's take a closer look at these sightings then and see if we can make sense of them.
Yeah, let's do it.
And we'll talk more about those other theories too.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so first of all, think about like the environment of an airplane.
Okay.
It's pretty unique, right? You're up in the air.
Yeah, definitely not your average Tuesday afternoon.
Exactly, and there's all these weird things that happen to your body.
True, like the pressure changes.
Yeah, and you're usually sitting for a long time, maybe not sleeping well.
Yeah, I'm always exhausted after a flight.
Right, so your senses might be a little off.
Makes sense. So maybe that plays a role in these sightings.
Possibly, yeah. Like, maybe people are just seeing things because they're tired or stressed.
And they're this unusual environment, yeah.
Exactly, and if they've heard the story about Captain Loft...
Right. Their brains could be connecting the dots, even if there's nothing really there.
Yeah, it's like when you're walking in the woods at night and every shadow looks like a monster.
Totally. It's our brains trying to protect us, even if it means freaking us out a little.
Exactly. So maybe some of these sightings, they're just misinterpretations.
Okay. But what about the people who didn't know about the crash?
Yeah, that's the thing.
There's got to be another explanation for that.
Right. It's like we need to find a theory that can explain all the sightings, not just some of them.
Right. A theory that can cover all the bases.
Exactly.
This is a tough one.
It is. It's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
And maybe some extra pieces that don't belong.
Yeah, maybe. But that's the fun of it, right? Trying to figure it all out.
You're right. It's like a good mystery novel.
Exactly. We just got to keep digging and see if we can find those missing pieces.
All right. Let's get to work, detective.
So before we move on, I want to touch on something we mentioned earlier.
Okay, what's that?
The whole, like, philosophical side of this.
Oh, yeah, the big questions.
Yeah, like, even if we don't believe in ghosts, you know?
Right.
This story makes you think about some pretty deep stuff.
Definitely, like what happens after we die.
Exactly, and what does it mean to leave a mark on the world?
It's like our actions have consequences even after we're gone.
Right, like maybe our energy, our memories, they don't just disappear.
Maybe they become part of something bigger.
Yeah, and maybe that's what these sightings are, like a glimpse of that something bigger.
It's a mind-blowing concept, isn't it?
It really is. It makes you think about life and death in a whole new way.
For sure. And it makes you wonder, what kind of mark am I leaving?
Exactly. It's a good question to ask ourselves.
It is. It is. So what do you say, should we dive even deeper into this rabbit hole?
Absolutely. There's still so much to explore.
Let's go for it. It really makes you think about, like, what if part of us sticks around after we're gone?
Yeah, it's like, are we more than just our bodies?
Right. Like maybe there's this energy or a soul or something that keeps going.
And maybe that's what people are sensing with Captain Loft?
Yeah, maybe it's not so much a ghost as it is like an echo of who he was.
Okay, but let's be real for a second. We've got to be a little skeptical too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We can't just jump to conclusions.
Like maybe some of these sightings, they have a more down-to-earth explanation.
Definitely. There are always other possibilities to consider.
Like what if it's just, I don't know, mistaken identity?
Yeah, that's always a possibility.
Like maybe people are seeing a regular flight attendant or a passenger, but thinking it's Captain Loft.
Especially if they've already heard the stories, right? Their brains might be looking for them.
Exactly. It's like when you lose your keys and suddenly you see them everywhere.
Yeah. Or you think you see a spider out of the corner of your eye, but it's just a dust bunny.
Right, our brains can play tricks on us.
For sure, and especially in a situation like this, where people might be stressed or anxious.
Yeah, flying can be nerve-wracking for some people.
Definitely. And that could definitely affect what they see and hear.
So maybe some of these sightings, they're not paranormal at all.
Maybe they're just like our brains trying to make sense of things in a stressful situation.
Right, but then how do we explain the people who didn't even know about the crash?
Yeah, that's the thing that keeps tripping me up.
If they had no idea about the ghost pilot stories,
All right,
then why would they see him?
exactly. That's where things get really tricky.
It's like, we can't just ignore those accounts.
No, they're a crucial part of the puzzle.
So we need a theory that can explain all the sightings, not just the ones that fit neatly into a psychological explanation.
Right. We need something that can account for everything.
And that's what makes this so challenging.
It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
Except the haystack is made of mysteries.
Exactly. Maybe there are multiple needles.
Maybe that's the thing with the paranormal, right? There's not always one simple answer.
Right. It's not like science where you can run an experiment and get a clear result.
Exactly. With the paranormal, it's more about interpretation.
And open-mindedness.
Definitely. Being willing to consider things that we don't fully understand.
Okay, so we've talked about the psychological angle, but there's also that philosophical side we touched on earlier.
Right. The big questions about life and death.
And that's what I find so fascinating about this whole case.
Me too. It really makes you think about things in a different way.
Like, what if these sightings, they're not just about Captain Loft?
What do you mean?
Well, what if they're about something bigger?
Okay, I'm listening.
Like, what if they're telling us something about the nature of consciousness?
You mean like how our minds work, or maybe what happens after we die?
Exactly. Maybe they're hinting at the idea that our minds, our souls, they don't just vanish when we die.
That's a pretty profound thought.
It is, right. It makes you wonder if there's more to us than just our physical bodies.
And if so, what does that mean for our understanding of life and death?
Exactly. And maybe these kinds of stories, they're like a window into that bigger picture.
A window into the mysteries that we're still trying to unravel.
And maybe we'll never fully unravel them.
Maybe not, but that's okay.
Right. The mystery is part of what makes it so intriguing.
Keeps us curious, keeps us searching.
And maybe that's the point, you know?
Maybe it is. Maybe it's not about finding all the answers.
But about asking the right questions.
And being open to the possibilities.
Exactly. And I think that's something we can all take away from this.
Definitely, no matter what you believe about ghosts or the afterlife.
There's always something to learn from exploring these mysteries.
And there's always more to discover.
Okay, so let's get back to the sightings for a minute.
Okay.
One of the things that stands out to me is how often people see Captain Loft doing his job.
Oh, you mean like the flight attendant who saw him doing the pre-flight check?
Yeah, and other reports mention seeing him in the cockpit or walking through the cabin like he's checking on things.
Yeah. That is interesting. It's like he's still on duty, even though he's,
Gone.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if maybe these sightings are more like, I don't know, echoes of his habits.
Yeah, echoes of his habits.
Like, maybe it's not that he's consciously haunting the planes.
Yeah.
But that his memories, his routines, they're somehow imprinted on those places.
So, like, he's not actually there.
Right.
But the energy of his actions is still lingering.
Exactly. And maybe that's why people see him doing the things he used to do when he was alive.
Because those actions were so ingrained in him.
Yeah, like a pilot's autopilot.
I like that, pilot's autopilot.
Yeah.
It's like his muscle memory, but for his soul.
Right. And maybe that's what residual energy is,
Like a trace of those ingrained actions and memories.
And maybe certain places, like airplanes, they act like a trigger.
A trigger.
Yeah, like something that activates those echoes.
So being on a plane or in an airport, it's like getting play on those residual memories.
Exactly. And that's what people are seeing.
It's a really interesting way to think about it.
And it kind of makes sense, right? If our physical actions can leave traces, like footprints in the sand,
Right.
then maybe our mental and emotional actions can leave traces too.
Traces of energy, traces of memory.
And maybe those traces can interact with our reality in ways we don't fully understand.
So in a way, we're all leaving these invisible footprints everywhere we go.
And those footprints, they might still be there long after we're gone.
Wow, that's a pretty mind-blowing thought.
It is, right? It makes you think about the impact we have on the world in a whole new way.
Definitely. It's like we're not just passive observers.
We're active participants, shaping the world with every thought, every action.
And maybe, just maybe, some of those actions, they leave a mark that can be seen.
Or felt.
Or sensed.
Exactly, and maybe that's what people are experiencing with Captain Loft.
They're sensing the echoes of a life dedicated to flying.
And maybe those echoes, they're more than just spooky stories.
Maybe they're a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit.
To the idea that who we are, what we do, it matters.
And that maybe, just maybe, some part of us keeps going even after we're gone.
It really makes you think about what we leave behind, you know?
It does. It's like
Oh,
our legacy isn't just about, I don't know, the things we achieve, but the impact we have on others.
exactly. And maybe, like you're saying, those echoes, they're not about haunting or scaring people.
Right. Maybe it's more about passion, about a love for something that just, I don't know, lingers.
Like Captain Loft and flying, it was his whole life.
Yeah, and even though he's gone, that passion, it's still somehow, out there.
Maybe it's like, I don't know, a ripple effect.
A ripple effect.
Yeah, like when you throw a stone in a pond.
Okay.
The ripples, they keep spreading out, even after the stone sinks.
I see what you mean. So Captain Loft's life, it's like the stone and the ripples that like the impact he had.
Exactly, and maybe those ripples, they touch people in ways we can't always explain.
Like through these sightings, maybe?
Maybe. It's like his love for flying is still out there, somehow touching these airplanes, these passengers.
It's a beautiful thought, actually.
It is, isn't it? It's like even though he's gone, his passion is still alive in some way.
And maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's what happens to all of us.
You mean like our passions, our energy, it keeps going even after we're gone?
Yeah, maybe it becomes part of something bigger.
Part of the universe, maybe.
Right, like we're all connected in ways we don't even realize.
And maybe death, it's not really the end.
Maybe it's just a transition.
Into something else, something we don't fully understand.
Exactly. There's so much we still don't know about the world.
And about ourselves.
Right, and that's what makes these mysteries so fascinating.
They challenge us to think beyond what we know, beyond what we think is possible.
And maybe, just maybe, they give us a glimpse of something truly extraordinary.
Yeah, a glimpse of something that connects us all.
Something that reminds us that even in the face of death,
Life goes on.
and maybe so do we.
So, to all our listeners out there,
Yeah.
keep exploring, keep questioning,
And keep an open mind.
because the world is full of mysteries.
And who knows what we might discover.
If we're willing to look.
Until next time.
Keep diving deep.